What is up, guys? Lord Nick here, bringing you another One Piece related video. In this video, guys, I will apologize. I haven't been making videos as the last week and a half I've been fighting an upper respiratory infection. You're going to hear me cough during this video. I'm going to try to hopefully not keep the coughing to a minimum. This is going to be kind of a quick overview of the case tournament because I wanted to give this breakdown after the tournament, but it was only about 2 days ago that I got my voice back. So we're doing a quick redoing of this video. I've tried about 3 times to make this video, but all of them have had way too much coughing. Hopefully this one will be different. So the tournament composition, guys, turned out to be 47 participants. Ended up being kind of a large local, though it was a case tournament, so it was a bit more competitive focused. Everybody who played in it was trying their best to win for the most part. There was only a handful of dudes that maybe came in just to try to gain some experience against better players. We had people from all over as well. We had people from Austin, El Paso, San Antonio, a couple of guys that I saw from Houston. So people all over the place in Texas came to this little case tournament. Ultimately, it came out to be about 45% Dofi, 45% Shanks, and then about 10% kind of mixed decks. There was a one of Black Purple Luffy, one of Rebecca, obviously me, 2 Lucci's, 3 Blackbeards, 2 Enels, 2 Pluffys, and I think 1 Red Purple Luffy. And then otherwise it was Dofi Shanks. So majority of the tournament was Dofi Shanks. And I mean, I kind of anticipated that, and so I had prepped ahead of time with the idea of these 2 decks being the 2 decks that I would end up seeing. I ended up not seeing a single Dofi though, so all my prepping for Dofi ended up turning out to be what I thought would be pretty bad. Actually turned it out, the deck did relatively well against everybody else still. Black Purple Luffy, I lost. It was kind of a close matchup, but I kind of expected a loss in this matchup. I've only tested it maybe 2 times prior to this tournament, and both times were losses. Just the fact that he can make his characters cost 1 more made it really difficult for me to remember my math, because I'm looking at the characters and I'm not thinking that all in all. I could have probably done some visual representation or taken my turns a little bit slower to kind of think out things. But ultimately I kind of played it badly, and I could have probably won the match if I played it a little bit better, but I ultimately played it a little bit badly and lost the match. Round 2, I went against local Shanks. He's played into Rebecca before outside of me. His buddy plays it a bit. He ultimately just didn't see any of the really good top end that he needed to see. I think he saw 1 10-drop Shanks, but other than that, he saw 3 Beckmans, and that was it. And I was able to just constantly put enough pressure onto his board state and everything. I inevitably ended up with 2 Kuzons on board. I saw all 3 Kuzons in this matchup. It went really easy. The next round, I didn't see a single Kuzon, and I played it badly. I was against a buddy of mine from Austin, and he played Shanks as well, and I probably could have won this. I actually could have won this matchup, but I decided to play to try to find my Kuzon, opposed to play to the fact that I had a Luffy in hand, and there was 1 turn where he put off the pressure a little bit, and I had enough of a board state where I could put out the Luffy and have been safe with it. Instead I didn't, and then he played a 10-drop Shanks, and because he had a 10-drop Roger and then a Shanks on board, the pressure just became too much for me at that point, and I could not stop it. And I couldn't race him either. So it was a situation where I messed up by not playing the Luffy and instead trying to play for the Kuzons. Turned out that the last card in my life was Kuzon, and my other 2 Kuzons were the last 2, or in the bottom 4 of my deck. So ultimately I lost that because of a bad choice by me. And that's kind of just like where it can happen when I'm trying to play too much around what my win condition generally is. And even though I had my alternate win condition, I didn't go for it because it felt like a gamble. If he had a Beckman, I would lose it. But ultimately, even if he had a Beckman, it actually would have been a better play because I could deal with the Beckman. I can't deal with the 10-drop Shanks afterwards. Round 4, my opponent FF technically before the round, but he did not leave until he saw who his opponent was, and he forgot to register the drop, so he just left. So his buddy told me he'd FF'd, but I saw him leaving when the round got announced, and he looked down at his phone, saw it was me, and he left. So like, I'm a known Rebecca player amongst the area, so I think he was hoping for a different matchup, maybe either for practice or for just a better chance of going into the 3-2 bracket, He saw my name, and just chose to leave. So I'll take that as a win, even though it's technically a win. I'm taking that still as a mental win, just due to the fact that it's like, all right, my notoriety of being a Rebecca player was enough to get me the win there. Then round 5, I played against one of the 2NLs. I felt bad for the guy. Like, he played it relatively well. If he was against most other matchup, he probably would have won. But he didn't know how much I was going to starve his life. And I ultimately got onto the board 2 Kuzans and an Aramaki, and he just could not come back from that. And then I ended up with a Moncherie loop of Rebecca, with a Rebecca and a Sabo, and so I was kept getting the Rebecca back, blocking that turn with Rebecca, play the Sabo the next turn, get the Rebecca back, and just kind of kept doing that over and over and over again, until I won, and so it went really well. Round 6 should have happened. We should have had 2 undefeateds to make a round 6. The problem was that in round 5, one of the undefeateds was in the middle of his game, and he was getting close to winning, and there was multiple discussions during the game about his buddy having won and been he was at that point 4-1. Had it gone to round 6, he would have to go 5-1 based off of who he lost to, because his loss in the 3rd round had already dropped, and if he lost in the even if he lost in the 6th round, there was a decent chance, because of the fact that his 3rd round person beat him and was a pair down, I think, for him or something like that. I don't remember how all of it went. I don't know. Basically, he was pretty positive if he lost in the next round, even being a 4-2, he would not make it, even though 3 or 4 4-2s were going to make it in round 6. And then I was a 3-2, so I had a good chance of going 4-2. There was one other guy who probably, if he'd gone 4-2, would make it in. But because of that, he was telling his buddy during the match, hey, if you lose this one, it's actually better for me because you're guaranteed in, I'm guaranteed in. Which is coercion. It's trying to convince his buddy that he doesn't have to play for the win. And when his buddy came down to the final turn that he had, he was looking at his opponent, knew exactly what his opponent had in his hand because he'd seen him draw into those cards. So he knew that there was 1 2K, 1 1K, and 1 brick, which he then also had a 9K swing, so he couldn't even get out of it. So if he just swings at life, he wins. And instead, his buddy's like, dude, just swing at the body. And he thinks about it for a second and then swings at the body. And then the opponent swings at him and he can't counter out and he loses. It was the biggest throw because of the fact that he had perfect knowledge of the hand. And I had come into the game seeing that, asked a person, does he know what's in that guy's hand? And he's like, he knows that there's not enough counter to get out of 9. And I was like, so why doesn't he just swing at face? And he looks at me and we both know that he needed to swing at face there. Everybody that was watching this game, there was 7 of us watching this game at this point, knew if he swung face, he wins the game. And we know he knows that too. So his buddy convinces him not to middle of the game. So we all confront the buddy, not necessarily the guy that throws, because the guy that threw, I mean, I'm not gonna say anything bad about him as a player. He's a really solid player, but sometimes any player can kind of get into their own head and think about, oh, maybe I need to make the safe play and survive, and not even think about it. But he also was making that play with his only blocker, so you either just don't swing with the blocker or you swing that blocker at face. That's just the scenario he's in. We're both at 0 life. You don't have any other Dawn. There's no other plays you can make. You either don't swing with the blocker or you swing the blocker at face. So there's no reason he should have done that, other than the fact that his friend told him to. So because of that, it goes only to round 5. It ends. One of the X1s does not make it into the top 8 now because of it. So there's not all X1s in top 8 like there should be. There's not 2 undefeateds going into a final round like there should be. Instead, we cut the rounds short and go into the next one. I don't blame the guys running the tournament, because the guy running the tournament was watching one of the other games that had there wasn't many judge calls, and that game had 2. The entire tournament had 5 in general, and 2 of them came from that game. So he was watching that game. So because of that, he was not watching this game. So he didn't know that this situation happened until hearsay came from me and some other people, and even the guy that did it didn't deny that he did it. He just blamed his friend for listening to him, which is the thing that pissed me off the most. Either way, the rest of the tournament was overwhelmingly positive. I would say it was a very good experience overall, despite that drama. despite us not getting to see if I could go 4-2. I still went 3-2. This was the list that I had prepared ahead of time, and I told you guys there might be some shifts, there might be some small tweaks. I did make a couple small tweaks. I cut down the number of Zabos by 1, I cut down the number of Ama no Murakumos by 1, and I put in 2 stainlesses. So this tweak really just came into, like, it could have just been a Sabo and 1 stainless, but if I was going to add a stainless, I wanted an additional copy just to make sure I had that much. And the reason I was cutting down the Amas was I had only really recently started testing the Amas, and it was really good into Dofi, and I didn't know how good I felt about it into other matchups. Ultimately, this card has become a beast of a card. I am 100% on the Ama no Murakumo train. I think that this card is your 3 of. I think you play it over Gravity Blade. I think you play it as a 3 of. Just in the deck. I think it is just super, super good. And a big part of that is I think that Scarlet Suleiman are 2 of the best reducers we currently have in this meta. And that's just because there's so many 4-drops that having things that can hit 4-drops is super strong. Having a 2 reduction doesn't seem that good, but if we're running a card that can do that, it's really good. Plus the fact that we have access to something like Hajrudin that allows it to hit a 5-drop or 6-drop, which is super nice, and Patchwork, which could allow it to hit a 5-drop or a 4-drop. And so when you combo Scarlet, Ama, and Patchwork together, we're hitting 2 4-drops for 3 cards. Like, yeah, that's a lot. But pay 5, get rid of 4. Get rid of 2 4-drops is super good. Like, that is super strong. On top of that, the Scarlet allows us to then play another body out, be it Suleiman or Kyros. Or even, like, a Toy Soldier if we needed an extra reduction, right? Like, we have so many play lines with it, and it develops body, or allows us to remove something that's even bigger. So ultimately, I think Ama is super, super efficient. And then when we get to late game, when Kuzan is on board, Ama becomes a 2-drop Gravity Blade, which is super impactful, because Gravity Blade is so good into so many matchups. The problem is that it costs 7, so it turns off our turn. The biggest thing that Ama doesn't do is turn off our turn. It's 2 Dawn instead of 7, so we still have 8 Dawn to work with to develop our board state and actually come back. So it is a card that in the late game, once we have a Kuzan on board, is a turning pivotal card for our strategy. And so ultimately, I've just fallen in love with how this card feels in this meta. I don't think it's a perfect card in every scenario, but it is so many different scenarios that it is versatile and works in that I really like it. The card that I don't really get to use that much throughout the tournament was Stainless. I've used him in the past. I really like Stainless. There's a reason he keeps showing back up in my lists. But if I were to cut any cards currently, Stainless is one of them. Luffy is another one I'm kind of looking at, not necessarily because I think it's a bad card, not because I don't think... obviously I think Luffy is actually a really good card. It's just that in the current way that the deck plays, he is an ulterior win condition more so than like an enabler for the deck. So he really just kind of keeps me from milling out. And there are a couple of times where it's like, yeah, I really want to slam Luffy on curve, but most of the time, because I'm not built around Luffy, I don't have enough to slam him on curve and actually start swinging with him. He's more of a, oh, okay, I hit him kind of late and I'm ready to use him now type of card. So, I mean, I am debating dropping the Luffys. If I drop the Luffys, I'd put in maybe 2 Luccis, and then the Stainlesses could switch out to either an extra copy of Scarlet and Suleiman. It could be extra Sabos. I would look into wanting it to be Dressrosa cards just so that we don't increase our non-Dressrosa card number. And I would like to keep it at at least at 1k counter. So there's a couple of cards that we'd be not looking at, like Cavendish and stuff like that. But ultimately, I'm very happy with how the list feels currently. I definitely want some tweaks for it, but it's becoming fairly solid for an 09 list. And it's encouraging me that when we get to 10, that I just make the adjustments for this list for 10, which for those that would be curious is what that would look like. Luffy at that point would probably become 6-drop Luffy. Our Stainlesses would probably, I don't know what they would become, probably Momos, or they become Frankies. Our Kyroses would become 4 Zoros. And then probably Amas would be the thing that drops from the list because of the addition of Zoros. We don't really need it. We could probably cut down the Scarlets because we don't have as many targets, so we could get rid of the Scarlets. We'd probably keep the 3 Suleimans, and then the stainlesses would also be gone, and so we would have a grand total of 8 flex cards for new cards that we'd be looking at. Stainlesses probably become our Frankies, which I think we're going to run a 2 or 3 of. We could keep the Scarlets because of the Frankies, but because we're not running Kiroses at that point, it would kind of be a little funky. Though we could keep in 3 Kiroses, get rid of 1 and 2 Amas, and all the Amas for Zoros. But I mean, there's an option there, but I think at that point that we're with a ton of on plays, and I think we need a couple more activate mains to get around the Blackbeard matchup some. But ultimately, 7-drop Luffy might actually completely switch out for just 6-drop Luffy. Moncherie is probably going to stay at a 2 of, and that might become our list, honestly. I think our list would be really solid at that point. The only card, like I said, we'd be considering Scarlets and Kyros is completely dropping. Amas and Stainlesses are probably both gone. So the list will start looking pretty good, and when we get it on sim, guys, I'll start showing you what my kind of conceptualizations of this list would become, or what I would think is kind of like the idea that I have for the 10 list. But for 9, I think this is a great starting point, and I want people to know that like the cards to look at for switching out here would be Stainlesses, Luffy's for other cards that could put cards back, so stuff like Lucci might be an option, and then 1 or 2 of the Kiroses might actually be up for trades to Brooks. I think Brook is a much more valuable card in the current meta. The fact that he's a 1k counter and the fact that he is a on swing, also additional KO, is very useful. Whereas the Kiroses have kind of felt okay in this meta, not necessarily amazing, but not necessarily terrible. But with that, guys, I hope you enjoy the video. I hope you guys are having as much fun with it in 09 that I have. I have a ton of excitement for 10, but like I'm still actually actively enjoying 9, and I hope to be able to make more videos soon. And until then, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye, guys.